Okay, so let's go ahead and work on these values in the value column. And so we have a function called string value, which doesn't currently do much. And I'm going to use something called JavaScript object notation, JSON. So JSON is JavaScript object notation. And it's a standard for writing JavaScript data in textual format. And it's really convenient for storing in a database or embedding in code or whatever. So what I'm going to use here is the JavaScript object notation for value. And that's going to get us most of the way. So instead of just returning value, I want to call JSON dot stringify value. So you know there's a math package that has square root and power and some other stuff. We'll see that later. There's also a JSON package that has a bunch of stuff released, and stringify is a method defined in the JSON object, just like square root is a method that's defined in the math object. So let's go ahead and reload and see where we are. So some of these are really long. So like this is really long, so that's going to break our table a bit. But let's see where we are. So numbers display correctly, strings display correctly, and then we had some other values. I didn't even remember what these are now. So what are the four after string? Let's take a look. Yeah, not a number, infinity, and minus infinity. There aren't good JSON representations for those, so we just get garbage. Null works, undefined works, and then objects get formatted correctly and arrays get formatted correctly. So these are all fine. You'll notice that when I wrote the original object, I didn't double quote the key. I just double quoted the value. But internally it's double quoted, so this is really the right thing. And then for console, I just got that. And for console.log, I got undefined. So I think I made a mistake here. Console.log. And then document. So this whole thing is the document, and then document.write, also undefined. So we're going to need to do a little more work. Let's start with not a number, infinity, and minus infinity. So I'm going to use a big if then else statement. So if, now this will not work. So this will not work because when you try to compare not a number to not a number, it gets false, even though it's the same value. So what I have to do for this one is not a number value, then return not a number. Else if value infinity, then we're going to return the string infinity. And then I'm going to do the same thing for minus infinity. And then this is going to be my fallback. And let's go ahead and fix the console and the document as well, because those were kind of long and ugly. So copy and paste in two more of these. So if value is the same as console, and if value is the same as document, so the functions, I just get undefined because there's no good JSON representation for those. So we'll come back to those, but let's go ahead and reload. Oh, so I probably have an error, F12. Is not a number is not defined. So I should be lowercase. So let's reload. There we go. So this is looking a little better. So 0, 1, the two strings. 0, 1, two strings, not a number, infinity minus infinity, null. And then undefined, so we want, oh, so undefined is not a number. Actually, so what we want to do is both, it's a number and it is nan. So let's say type of value number and is nan value. There, that's better. Null, undefined, objects, arrays, console. So no good representation for those. Let's actually take a look. So F12, let me show you how to get the name of a function, if there is one. So there's the function, and functions are actually objects in JavaScript. And so objects have methods and properties, and one of the properties on a function object is the name property. And this only works if you define it as a named function. If I say, for example, var x is equal to function console.log, hello. So this is not a named function, and so if I say x.name, oh, actually worked. Well, how about if I say var y is x? Huh. Okay, well, I was not expecting that. Somehow JavaScript is smart enough to know that x is the name of this function. I don't know exactly how, but moving on, what we're going to do is here we're going to say, and now we need to know if this is a function or not. So type of x is function. We're going to say else if type of value is function, then we're going to return, and let's do value.name plus, and we'll just put open close after that to show that it's a function. So reload, there, console, and then log is a function, and document and write is a function. Okay, so those are pretty good for string representations right now. Now you'll notice that arrays are just objects in JavaScript, and really the difference between objects and arrays are that arrays have some methods defined that aren't defined for objects in general. So if you read the chapter this week, you'll see that arrays have an index of method and concat method and some other methods, and those aren't for objects. So let's go ahead and, for example, if I say int.concat, I get a function, but if I say dot concat unexpected token, oh, that's because I need to do this. So I get undefined as the concat method for objects. So like I said, arrays are like objects, except they have some additional methods defined. And one thing that I can do with objects that we'll see a little more later on is I can find out what kind of object it is. And the way I do that is I look at a property that all objects have called the constructor. So let's go dot constructor, and that's actually a function that's used to define this object. And you'll notice that the function has a name, which is array. So that lets us know that we're dealing with an array here. So what I'm going to do is, before I just fall back on JSON, actually that's the type that we care about. So let's create a type string value. We'll say if type of value is object, then our value string is going to be object of type plus value constructor name. Else, we're just going to return type of value. Oh, and we have to call that. So that's going to be here in our type row. Instead of calling type of value, we're going to call type string value of value. And we have an error. Cannot read constructor property of null. Okay, so null is a special thing because null is considered an object, but it doesn't have any properties defined. So we're going to have to fix this. If value is null, then oops. Oh, my caps lock got stuck. Okay. So if value is null, we're going to return object. There we go. All right, so number string, these are numbers, null is an object, undefined is undefined. So this is an object of type object, which is just a generic object. And I could do a special check for that. If the name of the constructor is object, I can just say object here. That's an array. That's an array. Generic object. So console is just a generic object. Document is actually type HTML document. So that's the constructor for the document object. Yeah, let's go ahead and get rid of that. So if value is object and value.constructor name is equal object, then we're just going to return object. Now you'll notice that object is capitalized, array is capitalized, HTML document is capitalized, even though these are functions. And the reason are because they're special kinds of functions. They're constructor functions. And that basically corresponds to the name of a class of objects, which is a type. And in our coding convention and also in JavaScript general coding convention, anytime you have a name of an object class, you're going to write that in upper camel case instead of lower camel case. So if it's just a regular function, you want to use lower camel case. But if it's the name of a class or a type, you're going to use upper camel case. So everything else looks good here for now. Let's go ahead and do a little styling on this in the next video. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to do. So I'm going to add 2 more values. So I forgot the booleans before. And it's really easy to add additional values to the list now. So these 2 are boolean. And I think I want this to be lowercase, so let me just fix that and then I'll be done with this video.